What's up, everybody? It is your boy, the RichmanXx. Guess we'll try hardcore, why not? So, I'm just gonna call this Chats with RichmanXx. It's a pretty, chill time. Although this is I would guess that it's a fairly difficult game. But I've played it enough to be fairly skilled at it. Of course, I'm gonna die every now and then. And it is on hardcore mode, I believe. But hey, whatever. Let me adjust my mic here. Okay, so I had decided on making videos to this because it's a simple game, not really much to focus on, and it gives me enough headspace to just be able to talk about what I want to talk about. It could be just about anything. Sort of a podcast format in a way, but it's more just me at this point. And it actually brings me to a thought that I had earlier. You see, I've been wanting to make a podcast for a while, but the problem I had was that there wasn't really anyone who wanted to just take off with this idea with me, who just saw it as like, hey, he wants to do that? F it, I'll do it with him. There aren't a lot of people like that these days who see something and just set out and do it. And I've been wanting to make a podcast for a while, although I don't have many ways of doing it myself. Used to have my phone for a while, of course, as most people do, but my phone just broke. So now I'm completely in a position where I just have no way of making the podcast unless I'm doing it from my laptop, and I feel that would be awkward because it's my laptop, What am I gonna do with that? Like, I can make videos from my laptop, but only if I'm doing stuff on my laptop, and in a format where it's in a podcast kind of format. It's usually a bit more formal than just sitting in front of a laptop. Now, with this isn't exactly... Obviously, it's not a podcast. I'm not live streaming this and uploading it. It's just me talking into my headset while playing a game on my PS4. And I suppose for a while I'm just going to be doing this. And so, this being... It's not the first episode of Chats with RichmanXx, but I figured, I might as well continue sort of where I left off. This is me in a more controlled state. I'm a bit more concentrated, obviously, because this game isn't easy, but I also just want to talk about stuff, whatever really comes to my mind. Because lately I've been in a bit of dire straits. Now, I'm not gonna use this as an opportunity to vent. Of course not. But if I happen to start venting, it's whatever. It'll be a part of it. Might as well. It's not like there's a huge subscriber base. It's not like there's a bunch of people watching. If anything, this is therapeutic in a way. And continuing where I was earlier, I'd been trying to make a podcast for a while. Not exactly recruiting, but more trying to figure out what topics could be discussed aside from current events. What stuff could be talked about. Plenty of people have podcasts where they just talk about a specific topic. Joe Rogan has the MMA podcast, but he also has the Joe Rogan Experience, where he talks to people of different creeds and different professions who do different things. I've always been attracted to the idea of doing a podcast like that, where I just get to talk to different people, get a feel for different lifestyles. But, a broke college student, who the heck am I gonna talk to, aside from my peers, I guess. I suppose that could be a good idea for something. It's definitely not off the table. But, I gotta have a means of doing the podcast. Not even sure what I'm gonna call it. Oh, I died. Not even sure what I'm gonna call it if I even start it. It's mainly just a thought, a really good thought that I want to take action on as soon as possible. But I don't have many people who want to start this with me. You know, it's a bit of a commitment starting a podcast with someone, because these are two people's lives who are going to have to dedicate time to each other to start something, to nurture something into being. It's never an easy task, and I definitely don't look forward to the negative aspects of starting something like that always arise. But right now the difficulty I have is normally starting something like this. Taking on an endeavor of this capacity usually requires that you start it with someone you trust. There are a few people that I trust. I do trust quite a few people. And by quite a few I mean like 3. But are they reliable? You know, that is a question that you have to ask yourself when you're starting something like this. This isn't just about starting something with your friends. This is about starting something with people who you can actually rely on. And, you know, plenty of us have friends who we trust, of course, but we can't exactly rely on them for things. I'm not exactly sure if there's a specific name for a friend like that, but it's not that they're untrustworthy. It's just that you can't really rely on them 100% of the time. And it's not if it's by any fault of their own, it's because they have a busy schedule, or, you know, you're not the only person who's got a life and different things to attend to. And it takes that type of understanding. So of course I don't hold any grudges about stuff like that. If someone can't do a podcast with me, then they can't do the podcast with me. It's simple. It's the difficulty that I face in finding someone who is in a position similar to myself. They have the time to do a podcast, to do something like this, to start something like this. But I've yet to find any person who has the same amount of time that I do. I'm not saying that I'm just a bum who sits around and does nothing. Of course, that's not the truth at all. You know, I currently go to school right now. I'm in college. I'm a sophomore. But that's not all of my life, you know? I have plenty of time where there's just nothing happening. Currently, don't have a job, but I'd like to have one. I freed up my schedule specifically to where one would be possible. You know, a few days of the week. Take the time out and just do something, do a job, whatever. But I also want to start a podcast, and it's a completely different thing. It's a completely different thing. Completely different beast. You know, it takes a different kind of dedication, more than just time. You know, and this is not singling out school, of course. Oh, I'm definitely not making this. It was a good run. I might be able to make it to there. It's not really the factor of... Yeah, forget that. Sudden death. I forgot about that. Anyway, it's not really the factor of not having enough time that concerns me, or trying to get people who don't have the time to do this with me. It's the factor of finding someone who's already available enough to do this with me. That is... Ooh, I failed. Fun job. That is my primary concern. Let's try this one. And right now, it's like close to midnight. And I just wanted to talk. You know. Bullets. Just wanted to talk. And it's because I have this yearning to do a podcast. I would like to think. But that might not be it. I don't know. I just want to start it. I want to give it a try. Nothing trying, nothing done. That's how that saying goes, I think. And I want to give this a shot. I see people doing it. It looks like fun to me, and I want to try it. Now, of course, obviously there's no one watching, but I feel like discussing something really cool with someone, it will pull in a crowd who I can relate with, or who can relate with me, and the person that I'm speaking with, the co-host of the podcast that I plan on making. It's not going to be easy. Nothing ever is, but that's not really my concern. I just want to start it. I just want to have the opportunity to start it. And right now I don't. So I'm just going to keep doing this until I do have the opportunity. I'm just going to keep making videos. I'm going to title this Chats with RichmanXx because why not? Oh. Damn. Wait, I might make it if I... Let's try to get these. Anyways, I'm gonna label this Chats with RichmanXx because why not? And I'm going to just try to do something with this because it's not like I got anything else going on. Aside from school, this is pretty much it. And I want to see where I can take it. If anywhere at all. And so that's the game plan. I got plenty more time now. I'm gonna try to make this jump. Cool. So, continuing this idea of chats with RichmanXx, let's talk about recent stuff going on. Net neutrality, that whole thing, everybody's talked about it, so I'm gonna skip over that. Let's chat about... I was recently watching a Joe Rogan podcast where they were discussing umbilical cord stem cells and what they're capable of doing. That was a very interesting discussion. I don't know anything about that topic. What I will say is what I've heard from the Joe Rogan podcast. Of course, go there and check it out if you're interested, if anyone's watching this. But it's a very interesting topic because of what they said, or rather what the guy that Joe had on claimed that stuff had already done. Very intriguing. Kind of mind-boggling because he was saying that they were curing, they were like in a way curing autism because the stem cells were eliminating inflammation in different areas of the body, specifically in the stomach, which had a lot to do with how it was affecting things in the brain that cause autism. It was a really interesting discussion, and I think more people should definitely look into that. Now, of course, stem cell research is a pretty touchy topic because not a lot of people are okay with the idea of taking stem cells out of... I guess the more popular thing was that people take stem cells out of babies, but it's not out of the babies, it's out of the umbilical cord that they cut away from the baby. So, and of course, what the guy claimed was that, or rather what he said, was that not all of the stem cells acquired from the umbilical cord have the same effectiveness. So there are only certain ones that are more effective than others. And it was very interesting because obviously there's a lot of genetic stuff involved there with that how one baby's umbilical cord stem cells could be more effective than another's. And essentially how they worked, or at least the rough idea I had of how they worked, was that you inject the stem cells and they just start increasing the production and the healing rate of different parts of the body, and doing away with inflammation, which is a primary cause for pretty much most things these days. And so when the stem cells do that, it increases overall production of healing and increases the processes of the body that slow down with age. And it was very interesting, very extremely interesting to me when I heard it. Of course, the procedure is extremely expensive, obviously. They didn't say how much it would have cost, but I'm guessing upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Which, is no surprise. I mean, it sounds like the cure-all for everything. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that it would be extremely expensive to have done. But it's still, it's pretty obvious that something like this, seeing as how something like this is possible, it's definitely worth the research. However much money is being spent to research this, I think it's definitely worth the time that should be spent studying it, learning about it. Because this sounds like something where, because apparently, when you take the stem cells and they multiply, and they have, I'm quoting the guy who was on the Joe Rogan podcast. You should check it out. He was basically saying the stem cells multiply really quickly, and in a month you'd have about 1 million stem cells. 1 million stem cells could do a phenomenal amount of changes in the body. And by changes I mean they could affect the body so positively in such a short amount of time, because injecting those stem cells improves the capabilities of cells that are already in the body, like a sort of a natural steroid, so to speak. And I'm saying that loosely because it doesn't have negative side effects like a steroid would. It actually just improves parts of the body just by being in the body, by being introduced to the body. The body absorbs those cells, and then those cells increase production of healing properties. Increase production of I want to say increased production of positive sort of positive cells. So cells that promote the healing processes. Like Joe Rogan was saying, he had these stem cells injected into his shoulder that had been bothering him for a while. After a couple of days after a single treatment, he was able to maneuver the arm way better than he was able to before, and the pain had almost completely gone away. Only after a couple of days after the initial treatment. So obviously there's something to this, and it's definitely worth investigating. I'm probably going to just have to stop talking about it now, because just go watch the podcast and learn about it more from the guy who was talking about it directly. Now, I guess the only thing I probably should say is that there are a lot of people claiming that this is like something that does not work, and that's also a topic for discussion as well. I don't want to say either way if it works or not. I'm just saying that's a very interesting topic. But a lot of people in the comments section of that video claimed that it doesn't. And I'm not going to tip my hat either way, because I don't want to be bombarded by hatred by either side, and I could care less. I just like the idea. It seems like a very interesting topic to me. What is going on in this level? It's a very interesting topic to me. I want to see what research can be done on it, and what changes, if any, can be made on a societal level as a result of research being done on it. So all I'm saying is it's interesting. It's really interesting to me. And with that being said, I'll stop discussing it, because whatever I say here you could get tenfold in the podcast that I watched. And so carrying on from that, I would like to have a source of ideas, places I could bounce ideas off of. I don't think there are any places like that, These days, if you create content of any kind, you kind of have to just come up with your own stuff. People will call you fraudulent, people will call you out, send hatred your way. Hey, he's a fraud, he's a phony, he's fake. Yada yada, stuff like that. And they wouldn't be wrong. I mean, take my literally just a second ago example. I'm talking about something that I saw on a podcast that's already on YouTube, and I'm uploading this video to YouTube. Now, obviously, not enough people watch this to really care, but it would still be worth mentioning if anyone did care. And so, oh man, and so I'd get called out for it. And that brings me to another thought. The sensitive state that society is in right now, where just about anybody can be thrown under the bus for the slightest miscarriage of or misuse of their words, or misinterpretation of their own words. Oh my goodness. So say someone, I don't even want to use an example because I don't want to be quoted and then destroyed, but I'm just gonna talk from a base level, okay? Someone says something. It's not very controversial, but someone, somewhere, takes it out of context, and it gets blown up by society, and then essentially, this is a sort of quote that's going around where you become guilty until proven innocent. This is a new saying that's been going around recently, and it's sort of true. In today's society, you say something, it's slightly controversial in nature, and you are effectively labeled as guilty until proven innocent, with very minimal chance of a trial. I'll just add that in there, why not? And yeah, it does happen quite often. Oh my goodness, I did not see that there. It's probably as far as I'm gonna get there. Let's try this. And that speaks in droves to the current state of society. What can we do about that? Very little. Will it change? Probably not anytime soon. Not unless the controversy is blown open, speaking the contrary, where something happens in an opposite manner and people get tired of hearing what is currently now known as the preferred side to be on, the winning side, the side where victimization inevitably leads to victory. And of course, there have been situations where that has been the case, but not enough for there to be a societal change. And that's fine, it's not really anything. Obviously it should be a concern, but give me a second to gather my thoughts. So what I'm saying is, in the state that society is currently in, we got to take the time to learn all these new things. There's a bunch of changes happening. Different communities are forming. People identify as different things. I'm trying to stay around the baseline of this. I'm not trying to dive too deeply into it, because even saying certain words could be controversial and could draw a negative light on the person speaking. That's really how sensitive our society has become at this point. And so it's not that I'm fearful of saying certain words, it's just that I don't want to, because I don't want to face the repercussions of saying something slightly out of pocket. And that will happen to anyone who has enough eyes on them and says something slightly out of pocket. It's inevitable. Okay, we've seen it happen to multiple people on YouTube, and it will continue to happen. Now, that's not to say that this all stems out of untruth, because there have been cases where this has happened and caused controversy for all the right reasons. Okay, take the Weinstein situation. Okay, sexual harasser. For years this has been on the wraps, and apparently there's even been a contract where he was essentially allowed to do these things because he was basically the quote-unquote god of the Hollywood. You know, all of these attractive celebrities were drawn to him, not because of his attractiveness — he was actually a fairly unattractive man — but because of his power, what he was capable of doing, how he was able to affect someone's career alone was enough to garner him so much power in Hollywood that nobody could touch him. And so if someone said something about him, it would just get brushed under the rug. And once all of that was blown wide open, it became all-out war. There were people being called out left and right, some innocent, but most of them not. And in a situation like this, it makes, I don't know if this is specifically the Me Too scandal thing, but essentially other people will come out of the woodworks and say that, hey, I was affected negatively by this too. Me too, you know? And in some cases, yes, this would be true. And in other cases, this would be completely false. They're just saying this to be a part of the bandwagon and to get attention. And it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen from both ways. So, because of that, there's a lot of negative light being drawn on it, yes. But also, it's uprooting a lot of negative things that were being kept under wraps for a long time. And so we have to consider the repercussions of every single side of this. There will be people who will say this and are simply lying. But there are people who are saying this and they're completely innocent of lying. They're not lying at all, actually. Ooh, it's gonna be close. Okay. There are people who are saying this and have been sexually harassed. And so it's up to us as a society to decide if we should really take it so seriously that anyone who even claims they were sexually harassed, even if they were or not, we should immediately believe them because they're saying it. That is where a thin line should probably be drawn, you know, because, as I said before, guilty until proven innocent, that's not the way things should go, but that's exactly how things are going, and it's because of recent events that transpired. Weinstein being a pretty big and obvious example, but it's situations like that that we should be cautious of, and are exactly why we should pay such close attention to anyone saying that they've been sexually harassed. And so, in situations like that, it's really becoming difficult to determine who's right and who's truly wrong. Obviously, the person in the wrong is the person doing the sexual harassing. This is nothing new. But we also have to consider the people who are actually innocent of being sexual harassers. The people who are being accused of something who haven't actually done anything at all. We have to be fair about this, because not everyone is guilty. This is obvious. It shouldn't have to be said, but the way things are now, it's safe to say that. Or rather, we should consider saying that. Because we don't want this to turn into a he said, she said, where one side is always right. And that's exactly what it might turn into if we're not careful. Because we're already at the point where if someone says something and they lose every single privilege they've had. PewDiePie being a very good example. He said some controversial things. Obviously he was joking, but it got taken out of context. And now he's obviously, he's still a famous YouTuber, whatever. And he's still very well known. He's got millions of subscribers, yada yada. The same 2 cents. But he's been excluded, excommunicated from many things as a result of what he said and did recently. The second occurrence, he said a controversial word starting with N, whatever. And the first occurrence, he was falsely accused of being a Nazi, or being a supporter of Nazi propaganda, when obviously he was joking. The first occurrence, it was edgy. It was really edgy. It was so edgy, it could cut anybody's thickest piece of skin. Okay? It was some pretty edgy content. But he got thrown out into the wolf's pit, man, by doing some edgy jokes. And I'm going to use that as a good segue to discuss the condition that comedy is in right now. People can't tell jokes anymore. At least not edgy ones. You can't be an edgy comedian anymore. And that kind of sucks, What's going to happen to all these edgy jokes? Because a lot of them are funny. I get a good laugh out of some edgy jokes from time to time. They're edgy jokes. They're still jokes, though. You're allowed to laugh at jokes. Edgy jokes included. But the way things are now, jokes, you just can't. Not all the time. Because people get easily offended by everything now. And it sucks, but it's true. You can't deny that. No one can. Because things have just become so complicated, I can honestly say that if someone tricks me into thinking, and I don't even want to finish that joke because I don't know how people are going to react to it. But I'm just going to say, for my sake, if I get tricked by someone who is a transgender but not completely transitioned, and they trick me into thinking that they're a girl when they're actually still a guy, I can't be mad. I won't be mad, because that means they're pretty hot. But it's still confusing, Should I be allowed to be mad? Probably. But I've come to the conclusion myself that I simply can't be mad, and I won't be mad. Because by that point, if I realize that they're actually a dude, you can already guess where we are. So, obviously, they've tricked me, and it was a pretty good trick. And so I cannot be mad, obviously. Because I'm at that point. So, I can't be mad. I cannot be mad at them. I simply cannot. I will commend them for their efforts, because they successfully tricked me, and normally I can root that stuff out. But we're in such an advanced society that it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. And so, when you're tricked like that, can you really be mad? I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to be mad. I just wouldn't be able to. I'd actually be impressed by how convincing it was. But that will be the end of that. Because the way things are is where, I guess with this sudden change in how people can express themselves from birth, it's become a more sensitive society. We've become a more sensitive society as a result because it's such a sensitive topic. I have no problems with someone wanting to change their sex. If you want to do it, it's your choice. Whatever. Just as long as, I don't know if it's an expensive procedure. It probably is, I'm guessing. But if it's something you want to do, then you set out and do it. Nobody's going to stop you. It's not illegal. And I, for one, have no problem with it. Wow. But there are people who do have problems with it. And that resulting negativity that stems from the people who have problems with that, it's going to be seen and it's going to be noticed, and they're probably going to take some violent action against people who have the desire to change their sex. It's just something that happens. People fear what they don't understand or cannot conquer. There's a quote that I saw recently. Just Google the quote itself, you'll find the person it's from. It's a quote. I'm saying it's a quote because it's obviously a quote. I want to give credit where credit's due. People fear what they do not understand or cannot conquer. And this is true. It has never been more true in today's society. Because it's just the way things are now. It's just true. And with that, I'm going to change the subject to video games. Because the quote actually refers pretty accurately to that as well. People fear what they do not understand or cannot conquer. A lot of people do not have good hand-eye coordination. We know this to be true. Oh crap. We know this to be true because a lot of people don't play video games, but they blame video games for violence. This has been something that's been going on for years, probably a couple decades even, where people blame violent video games for violence. And I was watching some videos on this recently of people who brought up really good points. Yeah, it happens. It happens. It's never going to be something that will just fade into obscurity. There will always be people out there who will blame video games, violent video games, for the violent actions of adolescents. But it actually turns out that there's been a complete correlation with the aggressive behavior of adolescents and the increased purchase of violent video games. And what that suggests is that the more violent video games have been bought in recent years, the less and less violence between adolescents we've seen. So there's seemingly a direct correlation between the two. The more violent video games are made and bought, the less violent adolescents become. Funny, isn't it? That's a very odd correlation, but it makes sense. People get to express themselves in video games in ways they wouldn't be able to in reality. This has always been a truth about video games, that people are, well, it's pretty obvious, and people are okay with it. I play violent video games sometimes because it helps me let off steam. Or I like playing video games like Dark Souls that challenge my skill, my hand-eye coordination, that make me test myself. And sometimes when I'm feeling like being a goof, I just go into Grand Theft Auto. But I don't just kill people. I mean, that's not the one thing you can do. You can also drive a car around and be a nutcase. In Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, I loved the flying car cheat code. It was my favorite cheat code in that game. I adored that cheat code. I used it every time I played that game. I used it so many times, I'm fairly certain I broke the game from putting in the cheat code so many times, because I did it so often. It was my favorite cheat code. I loved flying cars. I loved the idea of flying cars. It was just amazing to me. As a kid, it was just awesome. But what I'm saying here is, I'm gonna get to my point in a second. As a kid, when I played this violent game, when I played Grand Theft Auto, I played it. How the heck? It's actually difficult. I played it because it was one of those games where I could express myself by doing whatever I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was fly cars into buildings. You know, fly cars over mountains, fly cars just high enough over the water of an ocean, just so I could see the car in a cinematic light, because it was really cinematic seeing a car do that. And it was fun to me. I loved ragdoll physics, so sometimes when my character flew out of the car and hit something, he'd just flop. So the majority of the time it was violence against my own character. The person whose health I should be concerned about. You know, and it was never really... Wow, it's a difficult level. I might have to come back here later. It was never really a matter of outward violence towards NPCs. It was more a matter of me doing crazy stuff. Taking a car and driving it off a cliff. Putting in the flying car cheat code. And just flying cars because I could. There's stuff like that I played that game for. The complete random awesomeness that I could do. It was all by choice. Because I could do it. The game allowed me to do it. That was why I did it. That's why I played those games. It was why I did those crazy things in those games, because it was a way for me to express myself, to express my craziest thoughts in a virtual world where the consequences were not able to be felt in reality because it was all made up. It's like using your imagination to imagine doing something crazy. You know, like those crazy thoughts you have when you're standing at the edge of a cliff. This is your mind telling you the possibility of what the possible consequences of that action. You know, what if I jumped over this railing and fell 30,000 feet to my death? Well, I would die. That's the consequence. You already know the consequence, but your mind still makes up that thought. And so, in a space in a video game, this thought comes to your mind still, but you can take action on this thought and have absolutely no real-world consequence. And that's the draw of these games. That's the draw of violent video games. You can do what you want to do, and there's no consequence. There's no immediate consequence. And that's why people play these games. You can do whatever you want and not feel any real-world consequence. And it baffles my mind how people don't see that. Don't see that in and of itself is a therapeutic thing. The ability to express yourself and your own personal thoughts without feeling any real-world consequences. The ability to be a hero in a virtual world. The ability to be someone who can get things done. And you can feel this feeling of success. That's the draw of video games for me. Is that in a video game, when I set out to do something, there's immediate results. I get things done way quicker than I do in real life. Now, that's not to say that I don't do anything in real life. Obviously, I get stuff done in reality. But in video games, I enjoy feeling the sense of accomplishment. And if it's readily at my fingers to do so in reality, why not? You know? If there's a free game on PSN and I download that game and I play it, and I get stuff done in this game, I accomplish some things like in N++. It's a fairly difficult game, most would say, you know? But when I get things done in this game, there's a feeling of accomplishment that comes with that. Maybe some dopamine, probably. But it's that feeling that I work for in reality. It's the feeling that you get when you get a brand new car after working a job for a really long time just to afford it. It's a feeling you get when, I don't know, you use the money you earned in your last check to get a nice shirt for yourself, a nice dress shirt or something. It's a feeling of accomplishment. It's a feeling of, hey, I did stuff, and now I'm reaping the reward. In a video game, yeah, there isn't a real life reward, but the sense of accomplishment. That is what people work for. That's what I work for when I play video games. When I play Dark Souls and I beat a boss, the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of self-worth that I get in knowing that my skill got me to that point, that is what I play these games for. Is the skill, knowing that I have the hand-eye coordination, the mental acuity, the technical know-how of the in-game mechanics to accomplish these incredible things, these incredible feats, controlling this character in such a way where I'm able to tap a button at a split second to save my own life. Doing things like that, it gives me a sense of self-worth. That's not easy to accomplish in reality. In reality, it's a lot more difficult to do and it takes longer. Yes, it can still be done though. But in a video game, it's much more easily at your fingertips. It's much more easily done. That's what I'm saying. And so when people blame video games for doing negative things to people, it's not that. It's never that. And the same could be said for just about anything, except for stuff that really messes you up. Like, I don't know, dangerous drugs, or doing something stupid like eating a Tide Pod. Yeah, doing stuff like that will mess you up, obviously. You know the consequences. But where video games are concerned, it's like moderation is key. You can't let video games control your life. If you become addicted to video games, which has only been seen in 2 cases, as far, from to the extent of my knowledge, there have only been 2 documented cases of people being addicted to video games to the point where they would not eat, they would not feed themselves, they would not clean themselves, they'd just play video games. Those are only 2 cases. And I think from the studies that were done, or at least from the examples I saw, there were people in China and they were playing a PC game. I think it might have been World of Warcraft. Now, that's not to point any negative lights on World of Warcraft. It's probably a really good game. I think I played it when I was a kid. It was an RPG game, an MMO, and I'm a bit of a fan of MMOs. I enjoy MMOs. I have fun playing MMOs with my friends. But it's not the game itself. It was just that those specific people were susceptible to the addiction of... They were susceptible to video games. They were able to become addicted to it. These are very minute examples that people have used to cast a negative light on video games overall. It's something that just... It can't be helped. It's unavoidable. But it's definitely something that we can change the opinion on, you know? Not all of society is going to believe that a game is addictive just because 1 or 2 people became addicted to it and their lives fell apart. It's not something that we're... I see. This is why... Now I know. I'm sorry, see, in this game here that I'm playing, I forgot to grab this. That opens the door. I was too distracted by talking. Now I know what people are talking about. When you're trying to talk to someone who's kind of not there, when you're trying to like make a video, and when you're trying to make a video and play a game at the same time, it's actually quite difficult to do both. Hopefully I can survive long enough to get to the door here. Anyways, see, I even forgot what I was talking about before. Oh, it's all sudden death until I get coins. I was talking about video game addiction. Okay, so those are only 2 examples, but those examples have been used to cast a negative light on video games in one of the many cases. And I'm not even gonna touch the religious figures that have said those things. I'm not even gonna touch that. But it's happened. That has happened as well. And they've said those exact things. That people get addicted to video games. That video games are quote unquote the work of the devil. Yeah, it's been said. And that's as far as I'm going to talk about it, because I don't want to start a controversy myself. But that's just the way things are now. People have to dodge bullets with their words. You sort of have to be a modern poet to kind of maneuver your way through the way things are now. I don't have a Twitter account. I'm glad I don't. But people become addicted to that too. Yeah, people become addicted to social media. Those people who are always sitting on their phones 24/7. It's not a coincidence, okay? Mark Zuckerberg himself, or Facebook, the company, I think, has admitted to kind of trying to socially, I want to say like socially construct the way people interact with the world, you know, to kind of control them socially, control what they see on their Facebook feeds. This is nothing new, you know. It's been going on for a long time, probably. And I never really liked using Facebook, only because it's a more family-oriented kind of app. You know, if I'm logging on to Facebook, it's usually just to check up on my family to see if they're still alive. But I myself generally stick to Instagram. And since my phone's been broken recently, I'm just not doing much of anything except going to class. And even that's challenging, because I used my phone to listen to music. That was my main source of music, dude. My phone had my Spotify on it. And music is what I stick to. I guess in a way I could say that I'm sort of addicted to music, because I can't go a single day without listening to some good songs. Without listening to some songs that I enjoy. Some specific bands. Mostly alternative music, but darn it, man. Mostly alternative music, but I'm a musical person. Music gets me going. Music helps me operate. You know, in a weird way. And there are probably a lot of people out there like myself. I would like to think that there are. And that gives me some ideas for channels that I could start, but with copyrights and all that, I don't want to take any risks. I do really very much enjoy music, though. And so, back to my prior point on addiction with social media. Yeah, people get addicted to that stuff. Anyone can get addicted to just about anything. It really varies from person to person. And that is the challenge that we face as human beings. In a society where all of these things are readily available at our fingertips, and all of these things are being newly created for us to get our hands on. Yeah, people are gonna get addicted to some things. It's and I've been saying this a lot, I've noticed, but it is inevitable. It will happen. People will get addicted to just about anything. There are people who are addicted to eating freaking rocks, paper, the list could go on. I just haven't watched that show enough to know, but yeah, people get addicted to weird stuff, to just about anything, and video games could be one of them. Yeah, there have been a couple of cases, but the same could be said for social media. If anything, it's probably way worse with social media. There are people who do not get off of their phones. There are people who are on their phones 23/7, and maybe 24/7, if they're insomniacs, I guess. But it's a part of society now, man. It's just sort of unavoidable, you know. And if if you think you're living in the wrong time period, if you feel you're one of those people who actually just prefer face-to-face contact, you are not alone. But it might be a bit of a stretch to say that you feel you were born in the wrong time period. Maybe the wrong decade, probably, but not by a very far margin. Maybe 10 years earlier, or 20, you might have been good. But hey, if not, you gotta deal with where you are now. Whatever. Same could be said to me. So yeah, it's the way things are. It's the way things are, and we gotta put up with it because it's the human experience. It's the human experience. It can't be duplicated. It can't be copied in any way, shape, or form. It's a part of life. It's a part of human life. Now it is. It's gonna be really difficult, though. The farther we get along, it's gonna be really difficult to have true face-to-face intimacy. You know, because everyone can't stand being away from their phones. Like me right now, I think I'm only putting up with not having my phone so well because I'm just sort of numb to most things that have been happening recently. So I'm kind of okay not having my phone around. I guess the only thing that'll bother me is not having music in my ears almost all the time, which was a definite benefit because, man, I really love listening to music. But that will probably be the only thing that truly bothers me about that. But a lot of people can't stand being away from their phones, and that's an actual thing. It's an actual thing. Like, I've heard of a couple of cases where someone actually got sick not having their phone, like it was their only form of human contact. It was a bit concerning to hear that, but it's probably true for a lot of people. And that's something that society's gonna have to cater to. Probably not very far from now. And you know what? With that being said, I think I'm gonna stop. If anyone has listened to this point, to my endless ranting on different topics, thanks for listening. This has been the RichmanXx. Ladies and gentlefolks, peace out.